My name is Lucas Fabricius. I am in second IB at Harrodsholm, and I'm going to be talking about Extract 3 of Pride and Prejudice. Extract 3 is about three-quarters of the way through the book, and is when the Gardiners, which are the auntie and uncle of Elizabeth, are on a trip to the Peak District. On their trip, the Gardiners then ask Elizabeth if she would like to go to Pemberley, which is the estate of Mr. Darcy. Um, Elizabeth would rather not go and is quite insistent on not going, as Mr. Darcy had proposed to her not so long ago, and she had said no. The reason being is that Elizabeth did not have feelings for him, and saw him as quite rude and not nice, as there had been some incidents before in the book, and it scared her off. And Elizabeth is very thorough in saying that she will only marry a person that she really loves, and in this case she really didn't. However, the Gardiners say to Elizabeth that Mr. Darcy is not at Pemberley, and therefore it's an empty estate, and shouldn't she not go? Elizabeth then agrees, and they go ahead. Then, so they go on their trip to the Pemberley estate, and they stand outside and walk in. And this first paragraph of the extract gives you a really good idea of the scene and the atmosphere of right at that moment when the Gardiners and Elizabeth enter Pemberley. So they descended the hill, crossed the bridge, and drove to the door. And while examining the nearest aspects of the house, all their appreciation of meeting its owner returned. She dreaded she dreaded least the chambermaid had been mistaken, or applying to see the place, they were admitted into the hall, and Elizabeth, as they waited for the housekeeper, had leisure to wonder at her being where she was. So they walk in, and Elizabeth starts walking off in some sort of wonder, sees Pemberley, and really sees how beautiful it is. Then the middle paragraph of the extract is quite long, and therefore there are some really important points as it gives, as Jane Austen does quite a lot through the novel. She gives an idea of what is going on, and also what the scene is, what it looks like. So the reader really gets a clear understanding of how amazing or how horrible a place is, and in this case, really how amazing Pemberley is. So the Jane Austen really creates feelings in the reader, while Elizabeth explains how beautiful it is. She says it's handsomely fitted up, and with beautiful objects. It is also, as it says here, it is a huge delight to be there, and the rooms were lofty and handsome, and the furniture suitable to the fortune of the proprietor. So therefore, you read, and all that Elizabeth's saying about the house is that it's beautiful. And she also explains the outside, the hill crowned with wood, which they had descended, receiving increased abruptment from the distance. So she's looking out of these huge windows, and how beautiful the view is. And then looking at Pemberley, it's this huge, beautiful estate. It's high to the roof, and it's handsomely decorated all the way through. But the most important quote is when Elizabeth said, Elizabeth saw with admiration of his taste that it was neither gaudy nor uselessly fine. So you read that and you say Elizabeth is really saying how much she appreciates how he has not overdone the place nor underdone the place. It's just right, and therefore it doesn't show. In some ways, it does show off, but not to the extent that it gives off a bad atmosphere. It's a really nice walking through the estate. So the next quote was really is quite funny. With less of a splendour and more real elegance than the furniture of Rosings. So Rosings is the estate of Lady Catherine de Bourgh, and Lady Catherine de Bourgh and Elizabeth did not get on well, as Lady Catherine is of Highbourne, Elizabeth Bennet is of not lowborn but medium, and therefore she's in the middle class, and Lady Catherine looks down upon her. And there was a visit earlier in the novel, and Lady Catherine was quite rude towards Elizabeth, saying some horrible things about how she doesn't know how to dress properly, and she's not happy with the way she doesn't know how to play the piano well or sing. And these are things that Elizabeth does not really look into. She's more interested into learning and understanding others and caring for her family, and which is more understandable for us. And therefore, by saying that the furniture of Rosings is less elegant, it's kind of making fun of Lady Catherine and saying that her over poshness has actually ruined the house that she's living in, which is quite a delight for the reader, as the reader, well, that's how I felt, and multiple other people have felt, that all your ideas about how this works and what's the right thing is for Elizabeth. Therefore, Jane Austen makes you feel that what Elizabeth does is the right thing. And therefore she creates tension by sometimes changing Elizabeth's perspectives, and this scares us, but it moves back to where we can understand. And this creates this sort of emotional tension and excitement to the novel all the way through. So, Jane Austen really, throughout this short extract, enhances our understanding of Elizabeth with the last paragraph, which is very important, so I'm going to have to read it out for you. "And of this place, thought she, I might have been mistress. Of these rooms I might not have been familiarly acquainted. Instead of viewing them as a stranger, I might have rejoiced in them as my own, and welcomed to them a visitor, my uncle and aunt. But no, recollecting herself, that could never be. My uncle and aunt would not have been lost to me. It would have been lost to me. I should not have been allowed to invite them. This was a lucky recollection. It saved her from something very little like regret." So, therefore, when reading this, the start of the short paragraph, the first 4 lines, that all you're saying to yourself is, no, Elizabeth, you can't be thinking this. Her mother is puts very much emphasis on just saying that her children need a husband with a lot of money, and this is not what Elizabeth believes in, which is also what we hopefully believe in. Most of us do, and therefore, in the start, you start reading that she would actually like being a mistress at Pemberley, and this shocked me especially, and others. She's like, "No, Elizabeth, why are you starting to like this man just because of his estate? Of course, it's a point that helps, but that cannot make you change your perspective of if you want to love him or not." But then the end, "But no, recollecting herself, that could never be." So therefore, she realizes that she was just off her head, and she was just kind of liking the idea of living in this lovely estate away from it all, which is understandable. But the fact that she goes back to her emotions and says, "I do not want to stay here because I don't love him yet." Of course, this changes later, but however, at this point in this extract, she does not love him. So we get this strong understanding that Elizabeth really wants to live with someone that she really loves, and this really shows it. However, she is a bit confused by saying that her uncle and aunt would not be invited. She obviously is giving this idea that Mr. Darcy would not allow it. This is all because that she is still in love with Mr. Wickham in a way. Sorry. And therefore, Mr. Wickham and Mr. Darcy do not agree, and he is planting ideas about Miss Darcy which are false. So this is especially why she's still confused about Mr. Darcy. However, this is a real turning point in the relationship. We're trying to see that if the chambermaid of Mr. Darcy, the Pemberley estate, and other people, including the gardener's perspective of Mr. Darcy, is that he's a very kind man, is he really as bad as she thinks? So this extract is very important for the whole novel, as it really shows how, like, the first real change in Elizabeth in liking Darcy. I know in the start there was a very short period where She liked him, however, he was rude to her, accidentally. And then through up to now, she has not liked Mr. Darcy. At this point, she slightly starts to say that Mr. Darcy might be the right one, subconsciously, of course. So therefore, this was a really interesting extract to read, and really gives one of the best understandings of Elizabeth, and also creates a lot of emotional feelings for the reader, and also some visual feelings just reading how beautiful Pemberley really is.